Hello everyone, this is Earth Archives. With the 2024 US presidential election, there will be more topics about the new owner of the White House, but friends may also be interested in who are the 7 presidents in history who failed to complete their 4-year term. Before the show starts, please subscribe, share, and turn on the little bell. This will help us grow faster. Without further ado, the show begins. Alright, folks, buckle up for a whirlwind tour through the Hall of Thanks for coming, don't let the door hit you on the way out, in political history. In the lead role, we have Liz Truss, Britain's answer to, how quickly can one become a historical trivia answer? Becoming the shortest-serving Prime Minister in October 2022, she clocked out after just 6 dizzying weeks on the job, making her tenure feel more like a guest appearance than a leading role. But wait, there's more. If you thought Truss left the stage in a hurry, let's rewind to 1913 Mexico, where President Pedro Lascarin set a record that's tough to beat. He was the head honcho for less than an hour. Yes, you read that right. Less time than it takes to watch an episode of Game of Thrones. His cameo was all part of a well-orchestrated coup, making it the quickest game of political musical chairs ever recorded. And now, for the grand finale, let's throw a spotlight on the United States, where we've had not one, but 7 presidents who seemingly sprinted through their time in the White House. While none matched the brevity of Truss, Lascarin, or our flash in the pan French king, their stints still read like a who's who of, wait, who? William Henry Harrison, 32 days. America's 9th president didn't have much luck during his time in office. William Henry Harrison's presidency was cut short after just a month, making him the president with the shortest time in power. Unlike some of our later leaders who faced assassination attempts, Harrison's demise came from a different, unexpected source. In 1841, he succumbed to an acute illness, initially believed to be pneumonia. Legend has it that Harrison's downfall began after he delivered an epic 2-hour inaugural address in uncomfortable weather conditions. Picture this, a wet, freezing cold day, and Harrison, without a jacket, hat, or gloves, soldiering on. It's the stuff of legends, right? Well, here's the twist. In 2014, a group of fact-finding epidemiologists challenged this narrative. They discovered that Harrison's chief symptoms, which included extreme fatigue and agonizing abdominal distress, were more consistent with typhoid fever. And the culprit? Tainted drinking water. As fate would have it, Harrison became another casualty of Washington, D.C.'s notorious lack of a functioning sewage system. And while he wasn't the only president to suffer such misfortune, he certainly holds the record for the shortest tenure in the Oval Office. So, let this be a lesson. Even the most powerful leaders are not immune to the perils of poor sanitation and untamed water sources. James A. Garfield, 199 days. Let me take you back to July 2, 1881, when President James A. Garfield arrived at Washington, D.C.'s bustling Baltimore and Potomac train station. The president had been looking forward to a well-deserved vacation and was accompanied by his 2 sons. Their destination? Garfield's alma mater, Williams College, where he was slated to deliver a rousing speech. It was a different time then, and presidents and their families traveled without the protective shield of the Secret Service. A simpler, albeit riskier era. Little did Garfield know that a sinister presence had been lurking in the shadows for weeks. A disgruntled and, let's face it, unhinged man named Charles Guiteau had fixated on the president, nursing a warped belief that a divine calling compelled him to eliminate Garfield. His motive? To make way for the ascension of Vice President Chester A. Arthur. A dangerous concoction of obsession and delusion fueled Guiteau's dark intentions. To carry out his sinister plan, he obtained a meticulously crafted pistol with an ivory handle, envisioning a triumphant display of his weapon in a museum after the fateful act. And so, on that fateful day, Guiteau confronted Garfield, firing 2 shots at close range. One bullet found its mark, lodging itself cruelly in the president's pancreas. Astonishingly, Garfield clung to life despite the agony coursing through his weakened body. But the tragedy didn't end there. In the months that followed, doctors, unfortunately, proved to be more fallible than firearms. Their attempts to extract the bullet were plagued by incompetence, leading to a harrowing and ultimately fatal infection. It's a heartbreaking tale of survival cut short. On September 19, 1881, just 1 day shy of completing 200 days in office, James A. Garfield succumbed to his injuries. His life, like his presidency, was tragically brief. Zachary Taylor, 1 year, 127 days. Let's travel back to the mid-19th century and delve into the life and untimely demise of President Zachary Taylor. Known for his remarkable heroism during the War of 1812 and the Mexican-American War, Taylor's final battle proved to be one he couldn't conquer, a relentless onslaught of bacteria. As the 12th President of the United States, Taylor assumed office in March 1849. Little did he know that a year later, on a scorching 4th of July, fate would take a sinister turn. Eager to beat the heat, Taylor sought solace in icy refreshments, quenching his thirst with glass after glass of ice-cold water. After the festivities, he returned home and indulged in a feast of sorts, consuming generous portions of cherries, various fruits, and iced milk. In the aftermath of this seemingly innocent indulgence, disaster struck. Taylor found himself writhing in agonizing stomach pain, besieged by waves of vomiting and relentless bouts of diarrhea. The source of his suffering remains a mystery, but it mirrored a chillingly familiar narrative. Just as President Harrison met his untimely end, Taylor's symptoms pointed to cholera, a vicious bacterium that ravages the small intestine. Sadly, despite the valiant efforts of his medical team, President Zachary Taylor succumbed to the ravages of cholera on July 9, 1850. It was a somber reminder that even the mightiest of heroes can succumb to the forces of nature, a testament to the fragility of life itself. Warren G. Harding, 2 years, 151 days. Imagine the scene on that fateful evening of August 2, 1923. Warren G. Harding, a beloved and charismatic president, had his sights set on a victorious re-election campaign. Little did anyone know that destiny had different plans. It was in the opulent surroundings of San Francisco's Grand Palace Hotel that Harding's vibrant life came to an abrupt end, his body slumped over in his bed. Doctors now believe that a colossal heart attack was the culprit behind this devastating loss. Harding had long battled with poor health, plagued by a persistent weariness that hinted at an enlarged heart. In the weeks leading up to his tragic demise, the president embarked on an ambitious nationwide speaking tour, daringly venturing to the untamed lands of Alaska in what marked the first ever presidential visit to the territory. Dedicating himself to his duties without reservation, Harding strained his already fragile constitution. Fate delivered another blow when he fell victim to a crippling bout of food poisoning. Seeking respite and medical attention, he detoured to the luminous city of San Francisco, hoping for a much-needed reprieve and time to heal. The suddenness of Harding's passing sent shockwaves through the nation, leaving a stunned populace grappling with the loss of a leader whose charisma had captured their hearts. As the dust settled, the president's legacy became entangled in a web of scandalous revelations. First came the revelation that Harding had fathered an illegitimate child, sowing seeds of doubt and tarnishing his once glowing reputation. And then, the infamous Teapot Dome scandal emerged, exposing a labyrinth of bribery and corruption schemes that had occurred under Harding's watch. Gerald Ford, 2 years, 164 days. Picture this: Gerald Ford, a man whose journey to the presidency unfolded amidst circumstances that had never been witnessed before by the American people. It was August 9, 1974, when the shocking resignation of President Richard Nixon, entangled in the notorious Watergate scandal, abruptly altered the course of history. In accordance with the provisions of the 25th Amendment to the Constitution, Gerald Ford, Nixon's vice president, stepped into the role of the nation's 38th president. But Ford's ascent to the presidency wasn't the only remarkable aspect of his tenure. The political landscape was already ablaze with intrigue when, in 1973, Nixon appointed Ford, a widely respected Republican congressman, to replace the disgraced Vice President Spiro Agnew, who had stepped down amidst his own unrelated political scandal. This unprecedented move made Ford the sole individual to have served as both Vice President and President without being elected to either position. Unfortunately, Ford's time in the Oval Office was all but fleeting. Despite the remarkable journey that led him there, Ford faced a formidable opponent in the 1976 presidential election. Democrat Jimmy Carter emerged victorious, sealing Ford's fate. On January 20, 1977, after a term that spanned exactly 895 days, Gerald Ford bid farewell to the presidency, leaving behind a legacy that remains etched in the annals of American history. Millard Fillmore, 2 years, 238 days. Millard Fillmore, just like Gerald Ford, sits among the fortunate few on this list of presidents, as his short tenure did not end in tragedy. He ascended to the presidency in 1850, succeeding the late Zachary Taylor, his predecessor and comrade in the Whig Party, whose unexpected demise is forever etched in our memories as the cherries and milk incident. Fillmore, a devoted member of the Whig Party, found himself thrust into the epicenter of a storm during his brief stint in the White House. The political landscape of the time was fraught with tension, with the divide between slave-owning states and free states escalating to alarming levels. It was against this backdrop that Fillmore made a pivotal move, signing the controversial Fugitive Slave Act into law in 1850. This act, designed to apprehend runaway slaves, imposed severe penalties, including fines and imprisonment, upon those who provided aid or shelter to these individuals seeking freedom. When Fillmore's time in office inevitably came to a close, he threw his hat into the ring, vying for his party's presidential nomination in 1852. Despite his best efforts, fate had other plans, and the nomination ultimately went to his fellow Whig, Winfield Scott. With this turn of events, Fillmore etched his name in the history books as the last president representing the Whig Party. Furthermore, he holds the distinction of being the final president to have no affiliation with either the Democratic or Republican parties, marking the end of a political era. John F. Kennedy, 2 years, 306 days. It was a time of hope and anticipation as the charismatic President John F. Kennedy embarked on a whirlwind cross-country tour. With his sights set on re-election in 1964, Kennedy sought to rally the nation around his pivotal political priorities: education, conservation, and the quest for global peace. Tragically, that dream was shattered on that fateful day of November 22, 1963, as Kennedy's motorcade wove through the streets of Dallas, Texas. In an act that would forever etch that date in history, an assassin's bullet pierced through the air, cutting short the life of this beloved president. The nation recoiled in shock and disbelief as the news spread like wildfire. The alleged gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, was swiftly apprehended and charged with the murder of the president. However, before the truth could be fully unveiled, an equally shocking twist unfolded. As Oswald was being transported to the county jail, a nightclub owner named Jack Ruby stepped forward and, in a brazen act, cut short Oswald's chance to tell his side of the story, forever robbing the nation of the much-needed answers it sought. In the midst of this tumultuous sea of emotions, Vice President Lyndon Johnson took the reins of a grieving nation, hastily inaugurated as the 36th president. The weight of the presidency now rested on Johnson's shoulders, as he navigated uncharted waters and forged a path forward in the wake of immense sorrow. The assassination of John F. Kennedy left an indelible mark on the American psyche, forever altering the course of history. The echoes of that tragic day still resonate, reminding us of the fragility of life and the immense challenges that leaders face as they shoulder the hopes and dreams of a nation.